Board of Education members on our ECHO Board of Directors. I'd also like to introduce Tom Hodell, who's principal of Shelby Junior High, Art Thomas, who's principal of Mallow, and his assistant principal, Glenn. I just saw him this afternoon, and I'm running an absolute blank, Glenn Patterson. And Bill Yeagley, who's Eisenhower's associate, is also back here, along with Verlin Monroe, our principal. George Cole is taping. George is our school social worker and has been very active with students this year in our substance abuse prevention program. Without anything further, I'm going to turn the mic over to Linda Brooks, who is our Student Activities Director, who will introduce our speaker. Jim Truman is a graduate of Michigan State University. He's developed 3 national programs dealing with youth, women, and returning veterans. He's appeared on ABC, NBC, and CBS National News, The Today Show, Our Magazine, National PM Magazine, The Charles Schwab Morning Show, and The Oprah Winfrey Show. Jim has been featured in Newsweek, USA Today, Business Week, Chicago Sun-Times, The Washington Post, The Los Angeles Times, The Detroit Free Press, and The Detroit News. He's been the subject of a half-hour documentary shown nationwide in Japan in March of '84. Truman believes in balance in his life, so he's done such diverse things such as being a circus clown, a rodeo rider, symphony musician, a cake decorator, and a parade enthusiast. He spent part of the summer 1985 working as a famine relief worker in Ethiopia. He spent part of the summer 1983 as a roadie with the rock group Journey. And he's passed a milestone in speech making. He has spoken to over 1 million students in more than 1,000 schools nationwide. Jim spoke to Eisenhower students on Tuesday, and I can tell you just afterwards, the atmosphere was just so wonderful. You saw students hugging each other, telling each other that they loved each other, and it was just an atmosphere that you wish, gosh, I wish we could keep that loving, caring atmosphere always going here. And I can tell you as a staff, we're going to look at programs and do things that perhaps we can do that, so that maybe put downs in schools will be a thing of the past, and everybody's self-esteem will grow and not be diminished by put downs. Mr. Thomas, can you talk about balance?
Jim Truman was at Mallow High School yesterday, and the thing that I guess I should have been made aware of Jim was when we talked to him about 3 weeks ago. We said, how many assemblies do you want to do? I have 900 kids. You want to do 3 or 4 assemblies? He said, no, I want all 900 kids right there at one time. And he did. He went in and at the end of the program, we had a lot of teary-eyed youngsters. And after the assembly, in the afternoon, I went around to about 5 or 6 classes. And I asked the kids what was the message they received from Mr. Truman, and should I have him back in 3 years? And every kid in the class raised their hand, yes, they enjoyed it. I think the thing that really moved me the most was that we have a boy in school who's been picked on by other kids. He's a physical disability. And at the end of the assembly, I saw about 10 kids run up to this kid and put their arms around him and said, we're going to be your friends from now on. That really moved me. And so it was a wonderful experience for the kids and the staff and myself too. Tom, say a few words.
Thank you. We had our program this morning at Shelby, and again, Jim said he could take 765 students, put them on the gym floor, and sit, and they would be tuned in with him, and things would happen, and it did happen. Probably one of the things that I noticed the most is it provided a caring atmosphere among students to students and staff to students, and it carried on through the day. One of the students came in the office and was getting medication, and he said, in my English class, I had a number of students who came up and thanked or apologized to him about the way they were treating him, and thanked Jim for what he had done today. The boy said, it may only last the day, but it's wonderful that it occurred the one day. And so that's a good thing that happened just on one day, and if we can keep it going, the feeling of being kind to each other and put up and not put down, and telling people how we feel about each other, I think it'll be a great message that Jim has provided to us, and hopefully we'll carry it on. Jim, I believe it's going to be yours.
Linda, and by the way, if my voice starts to go, it's just 3 days in a row, so I'm going to do the best I can tonight. Linda neglected to mention, unfortunately, in that wonderful introduction, was that I was also a 7-letter athlete in high school. I carried an A- average. I was president of my class 4 years running, and I also tried to kill myself 3 times. 3 times I tried to kill myself. Because you see, I was living off the image. I was so afraid if something happened on that football field, when the smoke cleared, there would be no one there for me. No one there for me. You see, in my family, love was based on performance. And so, the more I performed, the greater the love. And when you're a shy, insecure boy, as I saw myself, there was always the fear in the back of your mind, what happens one day if you don't cut it? What happens one day if you can't make the grade? What happens one day if you let somebody down? Will there be any love for you? Will there be any love for you? Parents in the room, raise your hand if you have a best friend. Okay? I'm going to use this, whatever mic cord I've got here. Now raise your hand individually, parents, any of you. And tell me what makes that person a best friend to you. What makes that person a best friend to you? Yes, sir. Understands and listens to you. Excellent. Anybody else? What makes that person a best friend? Yes. Unconditional acceptance. Thank you. Anybody else? What makes that person a best friend? Anyone? What makes that person a best friend? Yes. Share your problems. Anybody else? Always there for you. Anyone else? What makes that person a best friend? Yes. Shares your joys. Okay? And your sorrows too. Thank you. That's an important point. Anybody else? What makes that person a best friend? Yes, sir. Honest. Okay. Okay. Why in the half dozen or so of you that just spoke? Why didn't you mention the jobs that person had? Cars they drove, houses that they lived in, money that they did or didn't have? Anyone? Not important, doesn't mean anything, and yet we struggle with that so much. So much. I want you to understand the concept of this whole message that your sons and daughters heard today, and yesterday and the day before. And when I've been able to somehow be able to get all over the country. And the concept starts out with his best friends. Now, I consider it to be not just an individual. I consider best friends to be a safe place where young people can go, that they can be 100% themselves. And unfortunately today, there are very, very few safe places. It's not safe at school. In some cases, it's not safe at home. And in some cases, it's not safe with their friends. And this is what's happened. So I want you to understand that safety, a safe place, is what the overview of best friends is all about. And every one of you that just mentioned a particular adjective describing your best friend, it usually has something to do with safety. You were safe to be yourself. You were safe to open up. You were safe that you knew that other person wouldn't judge you. Now, the second component part of the program, parents in the room, raise your hand if in the last 5 years you have either lost someone who has moved away or passed away that you wish that you could bring back for just 5 minutes. so that you in turn could get some closure in terms of the relationship. Raise your hand if in the last 5 years you've had somebody that's moved away or passed away that you just wish you could bring back for 5 minutes so you can get some closure. Okay. The moment is now. The moment is now. I had a major turn in my life about 4 or 5 years ago. I was speaking at a school in Dearborn, and it's probably the biggest turn. I shared it with the students in the last 3 days, and I share it with all of you tonight. I was speaking at a school in Dearborn, and somebody pulled me off to the side and said, "Jim, you got big problems at home. It sounds real serious. You better take care of them." Well, it turned out my father had a series of heart attacks, 3 in succession. You know, I can tell everybody, and it's still a blur to me, that I don't even remember finishing that program. But I do remember getting on a plane, going to New York City where my father lived, and walking into a hospital room, and seeing my father laid out in a coma, intravenous bottles coming out, tubes sticking out all over. And I have to preface a little bit of this story because I grew up in a macho family. Ever since I was probably 7 or 8 years old, I was always told it was weak, it was wrong, it was unmanly to share my feelings. And so consequently, I grew up not being able to tell my mother or my father or my brother that I loved them. Never once. And I would have given anything for someone to have walked into my school or a place where I was, asked me to raise my hand. I would have given anything to have been able to raise my hand for my father. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Because I couldn't make him my best friend. It wasn't safe. You see, my parents were very effective in terms of shutting me down. Every time I would go to open up, they would always say, "I can't be bothered now. Don't talk to me. Don't let me see you cry. Go back to your room." And so I kept stuffing my feelings down further and further and further until there was no room left. No room left. And so when I walked into that hospital room, I looked at my father there for the first time vulnerable. The first time vulnerable. And I walked over to his bedside and I grabbed his hands. I grabbed his hands. And I wanted at that moment to tell this man I loved him. I wanted to tell him he was special. I wanted to tell him he had made a difference in my life. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. All the old tapes kept playing in my head. It's not safe. Don't say it. He's going to hurt you in some way. He's going to put you down. I sat in that hospital room for 2 days, day and night, trying to find the courage to tell my father that I loved him. His life was hanging by a thread. I still couldn't find that courage. So I sat there watching him, waiting for an appropriate moment that never came. And he moved in and out of a coma, sometimes for a minute or two, sometimes a couple minutes more. Each time there was another opportunity, and each time the same fear kept coming over me. And so instead of telling him that I loved him, I said, "Dad, do you need anything? Do you want a drink of water? Do you want me to get the nurse?" But in my gut, I wanted to tell him I loved him. I couldn't find the courage. I couldn't. I sat there waiting for that opportunity that never came. Coincidentally, which was lucky for me, essentially a month later I got a second chance to tell him that I loved him. I had a speaking engagement in New York City, and I called him up and I said, "Dan, let's get together for dinner, you and I." He had just gotten out of the hospital a couple days before. I said, "Dan, let's get together for dinner, you and I. Something very important I have to tell you." Well, he gave me the perfect out. He said, Jim, I got dinner plans. What about lunch? Well, I had a program to do, television commitments, meetings. I was flying in early that morning and flying back out later that night. And I was going to stop on the way back from the airport to spend just a little bit of time with my father. I have to tell all of you in the room, I rearranged my entire schedule. My entire schedule to get to that restaurant a half an hour early to tell him for the first time in my life that I loved him. And I sat in that restaurant, and you know how sometimes when you want to say the exact thing, you do little mind games in your head. You play both parts. That's what I did there. I was trying to figure out the words. What words were going to make him not hurt me? What words were going to make him not put me down? What words were going to make him not laugh at me? And his most effective weapon, what words were going to make him not be silent? Which for me was like the instant shutdown. And I sat in that restaurant. Finally, I just got up and I just couldn't control myself. I was in such a panic. And I started walking around the block just trying to get my courage up. And I completely lost track of time and glanced over one of the clocks on one of the buildings and realized that I was 15 minutes late. And I raced back in that restaurant knowing my father, who's Mr. Punctuality, would be sitting in that restaurant waiting for me. And sure enough, there he was. And the first thing he did was he put his finger in my face. And he said, why are you 15 minutes late? He said, you know I've only got an hour for lunch. He said, when are you going to be on time? And I looked at this man and I said, no way. No way. I've spent my whole life listening to this. No way. I don't want to be hurt anymore. Except I looked back at him, and if you've ever seen death in somebody's face, that's what I saw in my father's that day. He had lost 50 pounds since the heart attacks. And his face had virtually no color, and I knew there was no third chance on this one. And I grabbed his hands again, and I said, Dad, thanks for waiting up until 2 o'clock in the morning when I didn't show up all night. Thanks for standing by me when I tore the cartilage in my knee and I couldn't finish the last 3 football games and a ton of guys came down on my back. Thanks for bailing me out, Dad. I really love you. And as I said, I really love you, I whispered and I put my head down. I was hoping this man wouldn't hear me. When I raised my head, it was the last reaction in the world that I could have imagined. For the first time in my life, I never, ever saw it, even at my grandfather's funeral. For the first time in my life, I watched my father cry. And all the stuff that was sitting inside of me, I just let go. Just let go. And I reached across the table, and I put my arms around this man. I had waited my whole life for this moment. And I just held him and we cried together. I can tell all of you in the room, especially the men, that for me personally, this ranks at the top of the best moments I've ever had in my life. Ever had in my life. And I got together with my father the next morning for breakfast. He told me something, just blew me away. He said, Jim, I would have gone to my grave and not been able to tell you that I loved you. Because my grandfather told him that it was wrong. He was just passing that one on to me. Just passing that one on to me. Parents in the room, myself included, we've all inherited from our parents and from their parents. We've all inherited this legacy, both positive and negative. I'm asking those of you who came here tonight to make a commitment that you will not pass on the continued negativity that you have learned from your parents. Pass it on to your children. Because that is the legacy that keeps on going. And unfortunately, we have a tendency to continue it and copy all of the negativity that we've learned. Because you see, what's happening is, and many of you described it when you talked about your best friend, what's happening is that we're giving our children gifts that they don't want and need. They don't want and need. Should you get a gift from somebody you love? I mean, it's holiday season coming up. And they were excited about giving you this gift. They had spent a lot of time picking out the gift. And they had gift wrapped it beautifully, and there was an incredible bow, a perfect bow on the gift. And they handed you this gift. And they were sitting no more than a few feet away from you with excited anticipation. And you put the gift on your lap, and you didn't want to disturb the wrapping, so you were kind of pulling at the bow a little bit. And they were too excited to let you do it that way, so they said, come on, jump in. She started tearing off the wrapping. You opened up the box, you looked at the gift, and you said, wow, this is something that I always wanted. When in the back of your mind you were saying to yourselves, now what time do the stores open up tomorrow so I can get this sucker back? We are giving our children gifts that they don't want and need. And sometimes what happens when we give these gifts is that they're usually things that we were deficient in. So we feel if we give them, then they in turn will appreciate it. I always try and keep my talks as current as possible. And I always either gather information in travels around the country or else personal experiences. This summer, I went to support a friend of mine whose son was playing in a Little League game out in Livonia. And I walked into the stands, so walked all the way down the last seat of the bleachers, and it was about the second or third inning. And I sat down next to a man whose son was also playing in one of the teams. And this man was involved in every pitch, screaming instructions to his son. Move back, come forward, watch the batter, concentrate. And this boy who so much wanted his father's love and approval was trying as hard as he could. And he glanced over after almost every pitch to make sure his father was watching him in the outfield. When the boy was up at bat, this man was even more involved. He would shout out instructions, hold that bat up, watch the ball, concentrate. And this boy, again, so much wanting his father's love and approval, was doing the very best that he knew how. Score was tied, last inning, opposing team up at bat. Batter, boy on second base, batter hits a fly ball out to this man's son in the outfield. This boy misjudges the ball. It drops, and the winning run scores. Well, the bench is emptied out. Some parents to congratulate their kids, some parents to console their kids. I was sitting as close as I am to you, and I watched this man, and he took his fist, and he started pounding on his thighs. And all of a sudden, he jumps up and starts running out to the outfield. His son, who was feeling dejected, was coming in with his head down. Obviously, his error had cost his team the game. This man charged up to his son, got within 2 or 3 feet of his son, called his son's name out. His son raised his head, and this man took his right hand and cracked his son across the face. Every head turned. There was almost a silence on that field that was deafening. And And this man got so self-conscious, realizing everybody was looking at him, that he walked over to his son, who was now by this time walking away. And I was hoping that this boy would cry, scream, let it out, get angry, but instead this boy stuffed it. And so the man walked over and went to put his arm around this boy, and the boy pulled back. And watched this. And I heard some of you in the room gasp when the slap across the face occurred. So I knew that you felt for the boy. But you know, I also felt for the man. I knew in my heart that this man did not mean to do this. He did not mean to do this. He got so caught up in the winning and losing that he forgot at that moment that his son really needed him. Now this is a lifetime scar, everyone. No amount of father and son weekends, no amount of fishing or hunting trips, no amount of gifts is going to quite close that gap. Quite close that gap. Because you see, that was a moment, a crucial moment in this boy's life. And we can't take back some of those moments. And we can't take back some of the times when we lose it. And we say the things that we don't mean. And you know what happens with that is you wish after it's said, because you see the pain in the other person's face, you wish you could take it back, but you got so caught up. You got so caught up that it just came out. It just came out. And what happens is that we've lost sight of priorities in our own lives. And we struggle with this. We struggle with this. And for this man, the priorities of his son at that moment needing him was lost in his own issues. And it's a struggle out there to figure out what the priorities are. We know them in our heart. But there's a pulling and tearing out in the world that's incredible. I used to play a lot of football, and I used to look at this sign when I ran. It was on top of the door, running out of the locker room. And it said, "Power and prestige are real short-lived." And I used to look at that sign, and I thought that was the most ludicrous thing imaginable. Because in my family, power and prestige were where it was at. And so I never got in contact with those words until probably 5 or 6 years ago. I was on a plane going to California to do a program, and I remembered it. Well, you know, those words are pulling back and forth for most of us. And they're just platitude words, sometimes empty in the air. So I'll tell you what I'd love to do tonight, okay? And I've yet to lose this bet, by the way. So I am willing to pay off for any parent in the room. Any parent in the room. I want to bring those words home. I am willing for any parent in the room. I'm willing to buy you dinner any place of your choice. I'll pull out my credit card if you can name me the last 5 presidents of General Motors. Anybody. Any parent. Want to take a shot? Please, I have yet to lose this bet. I want somebody to try it. These men, by the way, would be appalled that you didn't know who they were. I want you guys to know that. They worked 18-hour days. They denied their family for weeks at a time, slept at the top of the General Motors building so that they could get down to their office at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, so they could politic to get to the top of what is essentially, outside of the Iacocca, the highest visible corporate office in the country. Nobody knows who they are. It's short-lived. It's short-lived. I produced a PBS special that I'm very proud of. Very proud of. I went into a youth hospice and I asked young people who were measuring their life in days and hours. I said, what's important now? It's important that you're measuring your life in days and hours as opposed to most of us who think we got months and years. You know, every one of those young people was so articulate in saying, my friends and family are important. And so all too often, we struggle with this aspect. Someplace between Minnesota and here is a suitcase with a tape in it that I love to use in my parent program. I haven't had the time to go out and be able to go out and buy another one. But it's the song Cats in the Cradle. Parents in the room, raise your hand if you've heard the song. Wonderful. I urge every parent to listen to that song at least once a year to remind ourselves what parenting is all about. Now, for those of you in the room who don't remember the whole song, it's basically a dialogue between a father and son. And in the beginning, the son wants to have a relationship with the father, and the father is busy. He's upwardly mobile. He's doing his own thing. And the son is asking for time. And slowly, as the song progresses, the roles change. And now the father, who's getting old, is realizing that he wants to have a sense of family. And so he's asking for more time for the son. And at the end of the song, the father says, can I be with you? And the son said, gee, the kids are sick, Dad, but we'll do it sometime soon. And the perfect last few words are saying, and he turned out just like me. And he turned out just like me. So if you want to see what you are handing down, take a look and determine where you are now, and that will give you a better feeling of what you are leaving. And so I'm asking you, when it comes to the negativity, stop. Stop. Because we have failed in some ways to figure out how to be able to talk to one another without screaming and yelling. I worked in the earthquake area outside of Naples, Italy, about 10 years ago. And I raised 10,000 gloves and mittens from Kmart to distribute to the earthquake victims, and I brought them over to Naples. And I got to the Rome airport, and I walked out of the plane, and I called this family immediately who I was supposed to stay with. And most of the people evidently had been gone working in the earthquake site, and the only one there was the 82-year-old grandmother who spoke no English, and I spoke no Italian. And I found myself on this payphone in the Rome airport trying to make myself understood to a woman who was also trying to make herself understood. And I was trying to get directions, and so I was asking her. And I noticed something happening in my voice. I noticed that the more frustrated I got in trying to get myself understood, the more frustrated she got at the other end, and our voices started to raise. And by the end of the conversation, I found myself on a payphone in the Rome airport screaming at the top of my lungs in English to a woman who was screaming back at me at the top of her lungs in Italian, and there was not a prayer in the world that we were ever going to communicate. Not a prayer in the world. So if you believe that screaming works, it only creates a reaction type of situation. And in a short while, we're going to do something that will amaze you in terms of being able to start communicating. I don't want all of you who came here tonight to just listen to basic information. I want you to take some things home that are tangible, that you can use every day in your family. I developed a concept. It's called the 24-hour challenge. And it's based a lot, I do a lot of national speaking for the Mad and Sad program. And I love the SAD program, not only for the, for the driving aspect under the influence, but more for the contract of life that SAD has initiated. And this contract of life, for those of you in the room who are not familiar with it, says that your son or daughter can be smashed out of his or her mind, and that they can call you up, and that you have to come and get them, and that you cannot be confronted, that you have to wait until cooler heads prevail. Now imagine how wonderful that would be if we could work that out in our lives with every relationship. Well, I want to try and initiate something tonight for all of you in your own families. And it's called the 24-hour challenge. And basically it goes like this. Everyone in the family gathers together and signs a contract that for 24 hours there will be no put-downs, no sarcasm, no demeaning comments, and that this will exist for that 24-hour cycle. Now, the kicker on this, everyone, is if you go 23 hours and 59 minutes and one person puts another person down, you have to start all over again. I need in this room an honest show of hands of those people who feel that they could take on this 24-hour challenge in their families and make it work. Honest show of hands. I have to tell all of you that there is no doubt in my mind personally that those of you that just raised your hands, that you live alone. No doubt in my mind. It is a way of life. We don't mean to do it, but we have a tendency to say something that unfortunately through our son and daughter's eyes sometimes comes out as, I'm no good, I'm no good, I'm no good, I'm no good. So what I want all of you to do, and my address is up on the table, I want you to take on this 24-hour challenge. And if you make it 24 hours, gather the family together and say, okay, how does it feel? And then go another 24. And gauge it at that point. And then another 24. And see if all of a sudden it doesn't start to work where people are catching themselves around demeaning comments. Because there isn't one of us in the room, no matter how old we are, that we can't draw back as if it happened yesterday to a comment that was said to us that hurt us so deeply. And it could be, for some of us in the room, 20, 25 years, we could draw it back as if it happened just a couple minutes ago. Because that type of abuse stays, and it destroys, and it eats away at us. And what it does is it creates a lack of safety. I say this to parent groups all over the country. I say, if you do nothing else as a parent, if you can create a safe place where your son or daughter can come back no matter what happens in their lives, then you have done an incredible job of parenting. An incredible job of parenting. And trust is such a fragile thing around around that whole concept of safety. I want to give you a technique tonight to work in terms of how to build trust. I want to show you something. What's your first name, sir? Roger, let's assume that I'm your son. And I've been walking around the house. And it looks like I'm really going through some tough stuff. Okay? And you come up to me and you say, Jim, what's going on? I'm watching you for the last couple of days, and I'm watching you having a tough time. Can you tell me what's going on? Let's assume at that moment that I need to talk to you. And I say, Dad, I'm having a really difficult time at school. There's a whole bunch of kids picking on me. And you say to me, you want to sit and talk about it now? And I say, no, Dad, I don't want to do that. Maybe that was all I could give you at the moment. Okay? So what you do with this is you say to me, Jim, I'm here for you. I love you. Anytime you want to talk about this, I'll be available. You know, maybe Jim has not had good experiences with you or with a lot of other people. And maybe most of us in this room, we've heard somebody in our lives say, I'm here for you, and then they weren't. So our bank of trust is not filled. Well, in my particular case, as a young boy, I haven't had enough experience to build a real bank of trust. So I'm going off a little bit of jaundiced thinking on this. So what you do as my dad is you take it one step further. Okay? You store what I just said to you. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days down the road, you approach me in their house and you say, hey Jim, whatever happened to all the problems at school with the kids picking on you? But what do you think Jim thinks at that moment, truthfully? And somebody else, what do you think Jim thinks at that moment? That you care. That you care. Now, the question, who do you think, by the way, that Jim's going to go to the next time that he wants, that he's got a problem? Who would he go to? He's going to go to his dad. Why? His dad cares. Now, let me ask you a question, Roger. Was that an $80 pair of Reeboks? Okay? Was that an expensive family vacation? Okay? It was so simple. So simple, and yet we have a tendency to overlook it. Okay? Let me show you something. If you were absent from where you work for 5 straight days, okay, and no one called you to inquire and see how you were and if there was anything they could do to bring you or anything that could help out in the family, what would you think on the 6th day? Going back to work. They don't care. How would you feel about going back to work then? Okay, now the reverse side on that. If you were absent for 5 or 6 days and several of your co-workers said, is there anything we can do for you? Do you need any errands run? What do you need? How would you feel about going back on the 6th day? Yeah, that they genuinely care. It's so simple. You know, we have a tendency. That was just a couple of phone calls. That was just being cognizant. And the unfortunate thing is none of us in the room, we don't want to be alone. And yet we're frightened. I have to tell all of you in the room the idea for my program. When I was 11 years old, I grew up in New York City. And I grew up in an apartment building with 1,000 families. I mean, it was humongous. Nobody even knew each other, nothing. It was anonymity. And I used to help this woman who was directly across the hall, as close as you are to me. I used to help her with her groceries. She was in her 70s. And I didn't, a month or so went by, or a couple months, I couldn't remember. And I was walking in a building, and I hadn't seen her for a while. And I asked one of the maintenance people, I said, whatever happened to this woman? And they said, oh, Jim, didn't you know? She died. She died. I said, what? And he said to me, he said, and they didn't find her body until her rent was 2 months overdue. Can you envision in your life being that alone that no one connects with you until your rent is 2 months overdue? When there are people every day that are living this out. And you know, the irony of it is that sometimes it happens in the most crowded places. I urge every parent that if you want to see a whole school evolve in front of your face, go into a lunchroom. You will see everything in that school appear before your eyes. You will see the kids that are in the power groups. You will see the kids who are alone. You will see the kids who wannabes. You will see all the things that are going on in that lunchroom. And there are a lot of young people who are in these 3 schools that go to school and come home every day feeling like that woman whose rent was 2 months overdue before anybody connected with her. Now, I want tonight, you've been very gracious to listen to me for a little while, but I think it's equally important to listen to some of the young people who are in the audiences, who experience some of the things, who are living out some of their own issues. And I'd like to start out tonight. Is Amy here? I'd like you to give Amy some real support on this. This is not the easiest thing for her. Public speaking is not the easiest thing for many people. You guys want to come up and help her out and just stand and really support her?
My name is Amy Taylor. I'd like to read a letter to you that I wrote to Jim. His name is Pop. Ago, I was a normal teenager, a student working in nearly a full-time dance and performing company, and varsity cheerleader with practice almost every day. I had a routine schedule during the week, and on the weekends I went out with my friends. My biggest problem at the time was probably a band here day or a Friday night with nothing to do. Well, all of that changed. On March 24th, 1992, I was diagnosed with cancer.
I like to tell them this time. I was in a hospital bed for 1 month and 1 week, with feelings of confusion, fear, and anger. My biggest question was, why me? I took care of myself, making appointments to eat healthy food and to keep my body in shape. Aside from the incredible fear of losing my life and everything I loved, my biggest fear was what people would think and how I would be treated. Sadly enough, I felt very isolated and alone.
I'm doing this scary thing, and some people didn't know how to handle it. While most of my friends were very supportive and would lend their shoulder to me to cry on, I still had a feeling of loneliness. No one was there that could be with me and say, yes, Amy, I know how you feel. For the last 7 months, I'm happy to say that I'm recovered both mentally and physically. The chemo treatments are very draining, but I feel myself getting stronger every day. On October 7, 1992, I received news of my cancer in remission. Although I must continue cancer every 6 months because within the next 5 years it can return. Through this experience, I've learned the importance of life and to be thankful for all that God has given me. Most importantly, to be the strongest and most loving family and friends possible. No longer do I take anything for The people who think their biggest problem is the lack of a new outfit or how terrible their hair looks that way. There are so many more important things in life than these. Jim, I'd like to thank you for the words of strength and courage you brought to me in this speech. My best friend had purchased a button for me that said, "Bald and beautiful," but I carried it in my purse in fear of how people would respond to it. You made me realize that it doesn't matter what people think. The only people that matter are my friends and family, and they love me for who I am, whether I have hair or not. I probably have that button attached to the outside of my purse now. Thank you so much. Your friend, Amy.
Could some of you come up and support her? It's really tough. Come on. I said something today to the staff at Shelby that is something I really believe. If so many educators who face young people every day, if they knew what it took to get them to school, there would be a whole different concept around education. I'd like to show you something. I just happened to notice this and just realized it. Did you notice that somehow predominantly in this group that came up to support Amy was predominantly young people? Because somewhere along the line as adults, we never got permission ourselves to learn how to be supportive and open and loving. And we struggle with that as well. And I grew up that way. I grew up like this. Don't get too close to me. You're going to know that maybe I'm weak, or maybe I'm frightened, or maybe I'm insecure, and you'll leave me. And so I grew up being afraid. And so what happened for me was the walls started going up so high, and I just kept people away, when in my heart what I wanted to do was to let them in, to let them get close. And maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when I finally opened up the door, there were people online waiting to love me, and I never knew. I never knew. And I spent my whole life with that sense of isolation and loneliness. So my real commitment is to not only just to the Amy's in the world, but to so many of us that have struggled with this. I want to open up the floor. I'm not sure who else. I'd like to open up anyone else that was in any one of the 3 programs that would like to say something to the parents. Anybody else? Anyone else? Any other? Anyone else? Any other student? Anybody? Any guys? I'd like to, Brad here. He's a young man I'm particularly proud of. I leave him in next spring to go on a world tour to meet with 12 world leaders to talk about pain in kids and what they can do in their administration to negate the next generation from experiencing the same type of pain. And I'm taking young people with me. And one of the young people I'm taking with is a young man standing next to me now, who really has shown me what heart is all about.
I'd like to thank Amy for sharing her story. One of the things that Jim really
something now, this, for me, this is what the evening is about. I'd like all of the young people, all the students who came back tonight, I'd like you to pick up your chairs, and I'd like you to line them up in front here, facing your parents, okay? So I'd like all the young people to pick up your chairs. Just line them up as somewhat of a straight line facing the parents. What I'd like all of your parents to do now is, on the 3x5 card that's being passed to you, as well as the pencils, I'd like you to write on that 3x5 card your greatest fear as the parent of a teenager. Your greatest fear. And in a couple of minutes, we're going to dialogue some of these fears, and we're going to talk about some of these issues. And we're going to talk about it at a feelings base, not at a philosophy base, not at an innuendo base. So if you guys, no, not to each other, to the parents. Parents, you got the 3x5 cards to the parents. You guys can raise your hand, and the pencils to the parents. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Your greatest fear as a parent of a teenager. If you don't get a card, please, please raise your hand so we get you one. As soon as you've written your greatest fear as a parent of a teenager, please raise your hand and we'll have somebody come pick it up. Thank you. Thank you. Could some of you help me, maybe just monitor and pick up the cards? As soon as you're finished, please raise your hand. You know what I think would help me out a lot? I didn't realize how many of you would come back tonight. Grab your chairs and maybe form, just because they have 2 aisles, so that it's closer in, because otherwise I'm going to be running down the end of these aisles, when we start this. Sorry. Raise your hand when you finish writing, please. Can some of you collect those?
and a lot of people were affected, and people were crying because they could like relate to things he said, and it really got to a lot of people and helped a lot of people. And I found it very effective towards me too, so I really liked it, and I thought it really helped a lot of people out. I just want to say I was very thankful that Jim came and talked to us. I learned a lot, and I learned how much my parents mean to me, and to always care for people, because they helped me through a lot of hard times. Thanks.
My name's Angela Anthony. I had a great experience. Last year I got in a fight with a chick from my school, and it was like, so it was like, I mean, you know, it wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal to me. I mean, it hurt me, and it scarred me. And I do have scars on my face, and every time I go in the mirror to put on makeup, you know, or something, I would think, God, you know, that looks bad. And I would think, God, that girl, you know, was probably terrified, and I'm terrified of her. I'd see her in the hallway, like, I don't want to talk to her, you know? And so that day, you know, Jim really moved me, and I went up to the girl, I saw her in the hallway, you know, Candy, I love you. And I hugged her, and I said, I'm very sorry for what happened. And she just started crying and hugging me. And it was like the most powerful thing I have ever done in my life. I mean, she was so touched, and I was so touched, and now we're healed, and now we can go on with our life. Because if I never said that to her, I would have never felt better, and now I feel a lot better. Thanks.
I just want to say one more thing. I think the most important thing that we learned from Jim is that the important things in life, and don't take the people that you love for granted, because you never know what can happen the next day. Tell your family that you love them. Tell your parents you love them. Tell your kids you love them. Tell your friends you love them. Because you never know what's going to happen day to day. And forget about the fight that you had the day before. Don't hold a grudge, and tell your family you love them.
I was in a really huge fight with my best friend in the entire world, and you know, he's got to be the most important person in my life other than me. And we had been in a fight for close to 2 weeks, and after you came to our school tomorrow, he called me up and goes, you know, Sarah, I'm really sorry, and you know, I never realized what I'd done to you and how much I truly love you, and you know, I'm glad we're friends, and I hope you're there for me forever. And, you know, I really thank you for that. Just love this time together.
Hi, my name is Christina Reithaler. I just wanted to say that I could really relate to him because he was saying how him and his father had a whole bunch of problems. And that's the same with my mom and I. And my best friend, she passed away like last year. And we were best friends. I never got to say goodbye to her during the fight.
Anybody else before?
Yeah, I'm Steve Tabaki, and I just want to say that I was in Amy's Spanish class, and every day I'd walk in there, I'd hug her and her friend, every day. And then after this happened, I just felt so bad. So I kept on hugging her, because I love her.
Hi, my name is Lavon, and my father and I had the same problem as Jim's dad. And I told him that I loved him, and he asked me what shock that on, and he said that it shocked him, but his father treated him the same way, and she wasn't able to make it next week. But I don't know what I was thinking. But I know that I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to continue to love him. And I know he cares, but he just doesn't know how to express his feelings. And I don't know what to say to him.
I don't have any children in the school. I don't belong to the district. And the way I do, I'm a business owner. And I see a lot of these kids every week. And the reason why I'm here tonight is because they shared this with me. And I was interested. I wish there were more parents here this evening. I just want to say to you, thank you for coming. Give these kids all the support you can, because they need it. Thank you.
Anybody else before? Anyone else?
I'd like to say very much that I'm speaking right now. Like, our classes had lots of problems. Like, when I was in 6th grade, there was a young guy named Justin. He had a seizure. And, I mean, this is lots of problems. None of us got help. So we lost and stuff. But had a few little tons and tons of kids from our school that are all bad. But, like, one thing he said that is true. Like, we were not going to come to the next because I just want to go out. I'd rather go to my friends, find them season. My dad wanted to go to choir practice. My mom threw a big fit. That's why we're here. I'm so glad you came.
Anyone else before? Parents, what just happened here? What happened? Anybody? What happened? What? Yes. Great. And what else happened? Anybody else? Oh, come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. I love this. I've been waiting all night for this. Say this, please. Please say this.
They feel safe and that they trust them a little bit.
What happened in this whole dynamic here that created some sense of safety? What happened? Come here. Oh. Great answers. Go ahead.
The first person made the first step, and it just made it easier for all these kids. Once one does it, they don't feel stupid anymore. And all they're feeling.
But that's exactly what happens for all of us. And it takes someone to start it. And it takes someone to open up. And it takes someone to talk from a vulnerable place. And unfortunately, all too often we spend so much time dialoguing without really saying anything. Without really saying anything. Now the key to this whole next exercise is that you have to, when you are dialoguing, both all of you and all the parents, when you are dialoguing, you have to talk at a feelings level by saying, this is how I feel, rather than this is what you're doing, or don't do this. No philosophy, just strictly feelings. And that's the only parameters and boundaries around this next exercise. Now, out of all these cards, I probably, the one issue that keeps coming up time and time again in all these cards is that your parents are afraid that they are going to lose you, that something is going to happen, that you're going to lose your life to drugs and alcohol. What would you want to tell your parents not to make them afraid anymore? Anybody? What would you want to tell your parents? Well, here.
And the parents have taught us right from wrong, and we know what to do. And if they taught us the right way, then we can keep ourselves safe.
Parents, does this make any of you less afraid? Any of you? Who wants to respond? Does it make you any less afraid? Any parent? Come here.
That's my daughter. That's my daughter, and I have no fear when it comes to her.
Oh. Hold the mic one up. Does that make you, any of you less afraid, though?
No.
What do you want to say to them? Anybody, what do you want to say?
The peer pressure is so great. Parents feel, I feel.
Wait. I love this. It's like dying.
I feel I've done a good job with my children, but the peer pressure is so great when you're getting in the group with their own kids. It's just maybe too much for them to handle.
What are you feeling now? What are you feeling? Yeah, what are you feeling? Go ahead, no, that's fine. What else are you feeling? What are you feeling?
What am I feeling? I feel like they don't believe me, but that's what I hear from my children.
What are you feeling? That's philosophy. What are you feeling? Say it.
I'm afraid for my children.
What did she say just now? What did she say? What did she say? What did she say? What did she say? No one can misunderstand you when you talk at that level. Okay? Now she says that peer pressure is going to overcome any, overcome anything. Anybody want to respond?
I'd like to say that, you see and hear, when somebody does something and the whole group just wants to do something good, we want to do the same that if we all want to do something good, then the peer pressure would be so good that we wouldn't want to do anything for you guys to be afraid of. And that's perfect.
Anyone want to respond? Anybody? Anyone want to respond to what you just said? Make anybody? Go ahead.
Sometimes what I'm afraid of is not that my daughter will be drugs or alcohol, but that she could get it when someone else is driving in the car. We've had a lot of deaths up in this area from car accidents. Our children have been killed because it wasn't their fault. And that's frightening.
You guys want to respond to help us through this period?
I think what you gotta do as parents is that you gotta understand your kids. Sometimes we don't always want to talk about what's going on, and sometimes I know I come home in a bad mood. I don't want to talk about what's going on, and sometimes it's peer pressure, sometimes it's not. And the first thing I'm always told is, "Oh, Sarah, don't be so crabby. Don't be in such a bad mood." But
Come on up.
Well, it's just, she says her parents aren't there for her. Then if you say you want to be alone, then don't say it's okay to leave me alone and then not want to be alone. If you don't want to be alone, just say you don't want to be alone. We're not minding you.
What are you feeling now?
Angry.
Thank you.
Because she wants her parents to understand her, but she doesn't want to say it.
Did you say to her that you're angry?
Yes.
Well, how did you say that you're angry?
I'm angry.
Okay, you have to
Tell me
say
what you want me to know. Don't say it's okay to leave us alone and then you're angry about it. Tell us what you want us to know. How are we supposed to know?
Okay.
But, see, the problem is, sometimes there's a time when you need to be alone, and then, like, my mom got her car phone, that's really cool now, because, it was for her patients, when they needed to talk to her, when she needed someone, and sometimes, when they're gone, I'll call up on the phone, Mom, when you coming home? I'm feeling scared, or, the house seems kind of big and creepy right now. I just really need someone. And Sarah, we're in the middle of something, we're going out for coffee with so-and-so, and we'll be home in a couple hours. And I'm trying to say it, I mean, it's true. Sometimes kids want to be alone, and they don't know what they want. I mean, they say I want to be alone, they're feeling something else. And we learn in health, that's a cool little reaction formation. That's what it's called. And, they try and teach us this in a textbook, and they never think of what's real. I mean, when you call up and you ask someone, Mom, when are you going to be home? I really need someone to talk to. I'm afraid. Maybe you could cancel those plans. Maybe you could come and talk to me. You say you're angry, but maybe it's because you don't understand what your kid's trying to say to you. I mean, you were there once. Was that ever like that for you?
Good challenge.
Yes, we were all there. We were all children too. But you have to can't just say, can we talk tonight? They have life too, and they have worries and problems of their own. We all have problems. And we have to try and understand everybody's problems in the family, not just our problems. And the parents splitting themselves apart through 2, 3, 4, 5 children, and they can't always read their mind. They have to actually say, I want to talk. Can we sit down tonight, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and talk, and not just say, I need to talk and expect it to happen just like that. I've worked all day and you don't appreciate anything. And when I want to talk to him, I shut him down. And when he wants to talk to me, I shut him down. I stay up in my room every day. I don't talk to him. We just started to talk. I mean, it's so hard because we're both being ignorant. And if he's thinking, well, she's going to be like that, then I'm going to be like that to her, and I'm thinking the same thing, it's never going to work out. And me saying, I love you, Dad, is going to shock him because that's not likely for me to say because I act on what he says. And I have to learn to have my own actions and not just respond to what he's saying and try to see past that. And one of the things in my family, well, in my dad's side, when you guys were talking about drug and alcohol and, trusting us and stuff, with my dad, I have to earn his trust. Whether it be through grades or the way I talk to him, everything I say counts. With my mom, trust is not a condition. And it's unconditional, and so is the love. And when I go out and I'm with my friends and they're partying and they want to drink, I'm there for them and I look after them. I don't drink. I don't smoke. And I think part of that is because my mom puts that trust in me and says, I think you're responsible enough to make that decision. As for my father, if he knew how my friends were, he would automatically assume that you're not hanging out with them. And I'm there for them, and they're there for me. And this is a time where a lot of people, kids, teenagers are going through a time they're trying to find themselves. And, I'm trying to find myself. And everyone's trying to, get their values together and what's right and what's wrong and experimenting with things and stuff.
What are you feeling now? I'm watching your face. I mean, I've let this go on. What are you feeling now? What? What are you feeling? Open is not. What are you feeling? What are you feeling?
It's hard for me to explain. I'm feeling a lot of feelings. I'm feeling that. I feel that my mom can. I feel that I love my mom and that she's listening to me right now and thinking, wow, look at this, look at my daughter,
Where's your mom? Is your mom here? What did you just say to you? What to it all? What did she say to you? That she loves you. Stop. Unconditionally. Stop. Okay? What? I let this go on deliberately. What happened just now in this whole dialogue? What happened? What happened in the communication? Huh? They connected. What happened before that? What happened just going back and forth here? Huh? They went further apart. There was no communication back and forth here. I'm sorry, what's your first name? Marie, come here. I want, because it was precipitated by you saying, by you challenging them. I want you to think in terms of rephrasing. How would you want them to feel? I saw love in your face. I saw real caring in your face. Can you rephrase that for them so that they can hear that love?
Everything that we do for them is out of love. She feels that she has to earn her father's trust. It's not because she has to earn it, because he's trying to guide her, because he loves her, and because he doesn't want her to get hurt or make the wrong decisions, make a mistake.
Hold on a second. I want to show you something. Through that all, you guys feel that that's love? Anybody feel that that's love? Huh? Go ahead, say it.
When they're acting like that, you don't really want to talk to them. You just want to stay away from them,
Wait, okay, go ahead.
Because you don't like what they're saying.
Wait, time out, guys. Yeah, she says she feels like she's at home. What is happening here again? What's happened here again? Yes, sir.
There's no resolution, there's no resolve between one against the other. They have solutions, they love each other.
It's escalating. Not you, I'm not here. What did your daughter say to you? What was the basic thing that your daughter just said to you before?
That in order to earn her respect, it's not a matter of earning. We have to respect each other. I have to be able to trust her just as she has to be able to trust me.
Come on, sir. Carol, stop. 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 You're getting into all this philosophy and all this psychobabble and all the rest of the stuff. What did your daughter say to you? That's it. That's it. Marie, what do you want to say to these kids? Stop the philosophy, Marie. What do you want to say to these kids? I know that this is going to be difficult because... Thank you. Go ahead. Okay, stop. What did you hear her say? What did you hear you say? Anybody? No one can misinterpret when you talk at a feelings level. It's when we get into all of the philosophy that we've grown up with that's when the struggle occurs. And so there's the tendency back and forth for all of this to escalate and nothing ever gets resolved. The person who said it over there, it comes to no resolution. And it just continues to grow. And unfortunately, then it gets into power struggle. I want to jump on this real quick. I would like all of you parents to come who came here tonight. I would ask you only one thing. Only one thing. I would like when you leave here tonight to make me the greatest mental promise you will ever make. I would like you to make this promise to say to yourselves that you will never, ever, ever say to your children, if you don't like it here, you can go someplace else. It is the ultimate power statement that destroys any relationship. Truthfully speaking, where would you want them to go if they could go? But it's a manipulation, it's a power struggle. It's saying, I'm the parent, you're the child, these are my rules, you better obey them. If you don't obey them, you're not going to be here, and on and on and on. And for them, it creates no ownership in the family. They become pawns. Oh, yeah.
You have this children, the students or kids, I don't want to call them kids, but young adults also make the promise that I don't like it here, I don't like what's going on, instead of working at it, I'm going to leave. Have them promise that they will work at their problems to make things good and not threaten to leave. Because many times it's an out for them. They know they'll hurt their parents, they'll say I'm going to leave just for that effect. They
What
want
are you
the
feeling
parents.
What are you feeling now?
Sadness.
Okay?
Sadness at
Express that to them as well. See, all of this gets into this is where the distancing comes in with everybody. We want to get our philosophy in. So everybody wants to get their own little 2 cents in and jump in, and then somebody else jumps back, and you notice that it doesn't get anywhere.
Well, I want, not that there's a challenge, is that you ask the parents to make a promise, and I think it should be both ways.
I agree. I honor that, and I appreciate it. Now, Marie, you've been put on the spot tonight with a bad finger here, and I just want to ask you, can you now rephrase it so that they hear what's in your heart? See, if we talk from a heartfelt level, I have to ask all of you in the audience, when Amy spoke and she read the letter, what was it about it that all of you felt? Anybody? What would you feel? Huh? Compassion? Anyone else? Fear? Yeah. Anybody else? Love, huh? But you could feel it, right? You didn't have to guess, you know, it was there. I mean, she was feeling, she was in pain, and all of us in the room, we could feel this, and we could gravitate towards this. And that's what cuts through all the boundaries. That's what cuts through all the words, is when you can feel it. And all too often, we go more on words. You know, we're great verbal. You know, I mean, I grew up that way. You know, you could just do verbal dances. And, you know, you do all this great verbal dance. I come up to you, and what's your first name? Susan. And I say to you, Susan, I say, Susan, how you doing? And what do you say to me? And then I say, and then what do you say to me? I'm fine. How many times in your lifetime do you say that most inane exchange that doesn't mean anything? All the time. Are we really ever talking to one another? It's the same thing here. It's the same thing here. Both of you need to hear each other's heart. And we don't. We don't. Marie, I saw in her face, she really, really cared about you guys. But you know, some of you guys expressed back to her that you were tuned out because you were, you know, because of the way that she presented it. Now, heart, okay?
We love you.
I know. Okay. I'm not done.
If parents wouldn't yell at us so much, maybe we would rather talk to them more if they didn't raise their voices.
What are you feeling now? Confused, thank you. What were you feeling when you asked about discipline?
Scared.
Thank you. Did you notice what happened just now? What happened? Anybody, please. What happened? Huh? Yeah, but what happened? Yes. There was gut-level honesty. Yes, I know, and they need to hear that because they need to support you as well as you supporting them. So I heard what you said about discipline. Your fear was, oh, what happens? What happens if I'm going to lose the discipline edge? Am I not going to be, you know, a good parent? What's going to happen in that?
You have a bad day at work or something, and then you got, I know. I often take it out on my daughter when I have a bad day, but I think she'll tell you that I do admit it, and I apologize to her, but it's life.
On the discipline. Now, this sounds a little crazy. My son's 13 years old. I sit down, have a father and son talk with him. I don't yell. We might flare up in the beginning. I walk away, come back. On this discipline part of it, I ask him, seriously, this is what's happened, son. What do you believe should be your discipline? I asked him to tell me what his discipline should be. Should he be grounded? I've had him write me a letter or a memo or a story of what had happened, you know, or why he did it. That was his discipline. It doesn't work all the time, but does that sound fair to you guys? Some kind of discipline like that. Not to say, hey, I can cop out of this really. I'll just come out and I just got to stay home tonight. No, I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I asked him.
Rebel against the parents who is grounded. Good. Take grounding over grounding. I was grounded
I ground him, I asked him what kind of discipline.
Yeah, but I'm talking, there was a ton of parents in this audience that grounded him.
Oh,
He
yeah.
doesn't do anything.
And I used to do the same thing.
Wait. What are you doing? Everybody in the room knows, but what are you doing? Okay? Is there anyone in the room that didn't see that when she was talking? Truthfully, okay? And did you notice, unfortunately, what comes out is, I was grounded all summer, and you parents have better do this, and if you don't do this, what happens to you guys when that happens? Anybody? Any parent? When someone comes in your face like that? Huh? You come right back. Absolutely. If people are in each other's face, is there anything ever accomplished? Not a prayer. Not a prayer. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think on that discipline, as far as working with it, is that you got to look at the fact that you want to be treated as someone would want you to treat. If the punishment is not coming from you, you have to say, if you can't give a punishment, you have to say, okay, that punishment has to come back, and it has to be the same to say that, trying to figure out how to put this in the right words here, that to do on to that person as you want them to do on to you. So, you ask that kid for that, what you want him to give you. Well, that kid also has to look back and say, well, what would I want if this were, if I was in my parents' shoes?
What's your first name, I'm sorry?
Dan.
Dan, what are you feeling now?
I'm feeling kind of set back because my son is up here. I know we have had many conflicts, and I try to deal with him as I would want him in a reverse role to deal with me.
What are you feeling, Dan?
I'm feeling that, I have a lot of selfness in myself that I have to bring out, that has to express. I come up with someone of the same parents in your path that, this is all shoved down. And being a parent, like I said, there's no rule book, there's no guidebook, but it's, I'm learning day to day.
What are you feeling, Dan?
I'm feeling an openness, a love from, that,
Stop right there. Where's the son? What did you do to Dan? He loved you. You just spent dancing around for the last 2 or 3 minutes telling him what he just heard, when you could have gone through it all.
That's something that,
we spend so much time in the platitude stage that we never get into the heart stage. That's really what this whole night is about, is trying to get everyone into, to talk from an honest level. And unfortunately, for most of us in the room as parents, we have not had any role models to be able to take what we want to say from inside of us and put it out. A lot of times it came from dictatorial people who use power struggles and discipline as a way of keeping us in line. So we never had the safety to be able to open up. Yes. Just go ahead. Go ahead, what?
Yeah, let's explain what we did.
If we go off and we do something wrong, we have like rape, for instance, it's us that we're hurting, not you.
How did some of your parents take that last statement? Huh? You guys didn't hear it? Say it again. Some parent mentioned. She said that it's us that we're hurting. She said it's us that we're hurting, not you guys. Okay? Yes, somebody in the back. Yes.
Do you have enough self-discipline? It's not
What are you feeling now?
What am I feeling? I'm
Please.
feeling that, they're absent. They don't want to be disciplined.
What are you feeling now? Please. What are you feeling now?
I don't know.
See,
I'm trying to understand. They don't want to be disciplined. They want to have their own. I don't know. I love it.
Thank you. Wait, stop. I got it. I almost got it in there. Go ahead. Sit.
We love them and we care about them. And we want to know how we can communicate without all this.
Okay, stop. That was wonderful. What happened? You started out in one direction. What happened just now when you said that? What did you guys hear? She went, thank you, here, what wisdom, here, go ahead.
She went back loving them again, no matter what.
Yeah.
We know that you love us. We are friends. Don't try to tell us what to do. I mean, yeah, tell us what to do. You guys are there to guide us. But don't don't come down on us. We are friends. Stand beside us. Don't.
I love this. What are you feeling? What are you feeling now?
I'm angry.
Stop, what are you feeling? What?
Disgusted, angry.
Stop, okay. I'm going to be respectful. If you start out every conversation by telling what it is that you're feeling inside, then it takes on a certain path. And unfortunately, what happens is that you could hear the anger, but because it didn't come out in the words, there's a tendency to misinterpret that anger and to call it all kinds of different things. And unfortunately, we've never learned again to verbalize this. Now, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, as a parent, both of us are parenting where we've been parented what we've seen. And I think that as a parent myself, I've learned the hard way that we all have to cooperate with each other. The child, the young adult, the parent. None of us know the answer to everything. And cooperate and listen to each other and not necessarily have someone be in total control of everything, but to share and discuss is more effective.
Yes, go ahead.
I feel compassion for teenagers. I remember what Shelby Parent I wanted my independence, and yet I needed those guidelines. And I think if we can treat young people as people, to go into their struggle, try to do their struggle. I feel your struggle, and to let you go.
Oh, wait, because you just had, what did you feel when she said, what? Thank you. Did you hear the difference in now? Okay. There isn't one parent in this room that at a depth level could not feel what you just said and be honest enough to say that to them. But you were able to put it in the words that you noticed. You got applause from the way that you put it. Okay? It was the way that you were able to express. And what did you hear that she said besides that she was able to feel? What came through to you? Anybody? She cares about you. Now, what was it the way that you put it? Because I think it's very vital for all the people who came tonight to understand that. Okay? What was it in the way that you put it? Mm-hmm. But you allowed yourself to be real. You allowed yourself to be vulnerable. I mean, there's no magic. Do you realize when I first started talking about taking my own life, that the first reaction in my head was, what are people going to think? You know, what are people going to think? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to put me down? Are they going to hurt me? And you want to know the truth? What's happened to me that I've learned is that the power is in the vulnerability. Because what happens then is you open the door for someone else to be vulnerable themselves. And what happened here tonight with the permission aspect where one hand it off to another, and you notice when I asked for volunteers, it wasn't safe. And all of a sudden, somebody started the ball rolling, and it became a little safer. And if we had let it go on a little bit longer, you would have discovered almost everybody attempting to get in there. Yes?
I just want to say, I love my mom, and my dad, and we have the greatest relationship. Nothing ever goes between us.
And this cuts through 10 hours of psychology right here. Right here. Yes. Right. That's wonderful. And you know something? The beauty of that, I wrote an article for a national magazine. I interviewed a woman. Her fiancé and her had broken up, and he was an airline pilot. And they were reuniting, and he was coming in from California. And he landed in Chicago, and he called her up. And he said to her, he said, I'm coming in. And he said, I'll see you a little bit later. And she hung up the phone and she said silently to herself, she said, well, I forgot to tell him that I love him. And, but I'll tell him when he gets home. And he never made it home. And see, that's the whole thing. So don't ever say goodbye, say I love you. I mean, it's real simple. Somebody that hasn't spoken yet, I want to honor somebody. Yes, go ahead. Okay.
With communication, it's really hard to open up and start. I think that we both have to understand that it's not an easy thing to do. You both have to take the first step. And it's like when they were volunteers thing out here, there was the first person that got out there taking this big step, and the rest were following, because then they knew it was safe, it was open. And when you're communicating, you can't just say, okay, we're going to sit down and we're having a talk, and then you sit down and it's rage. If you start yelling at each other in anger, that's not communication. You have to be calm, and you have to be honest and tell them what you're feeling, and the wall has to come down before you can communicate. It's important that communication is real and not superficial.
Somebody who hasn't spoken.
My name's Jennifer, and I just want to say that I know I can speak for most of us when I say that, we respect our parents. I mean, they work hard and everything, but a lot of times we don't feel the respect back because, like, what we do isn't as important. Our problems aren't as important as yours at work. And then it just seems like there's a level you put us on. Like when you scream and you say, I always say to my mom, why do you scream? Because there's no other way I can get through to you. It's just going to be back to the level. And that's just how you feel. I mean, when you push to the level, that's how you're going to act. When you don't get disciplined because you just know how to react to how they treat you. And when you try to tell them, they just keep putting you back down to the level. That's just how I feel.
What did you feel?
Then,
Can you start out a conversation so that everybody knows? See, there's a tendency again to get the whole philosophy out. If you started out that conversation and said, I feel sad because this is what's going on. And again, and this is what I urge all of you in the room. Instead of saying you did this, you're this, you should do this. If the more you can talk from this is how I feel, it gives room and permission for then everybody to respond. Because you pushes you right up against the wall. Right up against the wall. I want to be respectful of the time constraints, and I really work hard at that. I have to say something, though, and a question for all of you in the room. How many questions did we get to tonight? Huh? One question. And look at what happened. Look at what happened. There is no magic to this. There is no magic to this. It just requires a vulnerability. I love it. I'm 51 years old. Kids call me Jimmy. I mean, I'm flattered. I'm flattered. There's no magic to any of this. I would like to try to figure out how to keep this going for all of you. I'm willing to come back if all of you in the room could bring at least one more person back here with you so that we can keep this expanding. And I'm willing to ask the students to come back so that we can keep this dialogue going. So that's an offer on my part. I'm willing to come back, no charge whatsoever, just to keep this going so that it keeps expanding and more people learn how to talk from a heartfelt place instead of an angry place and a frustrated place. And so that families start to come together a little bit. Anybody else before we just...
I just wanted to say that about all that arguing stuff, I know, like, I love arguing with my dad every time we play games. I know, like, about race and stuff like that. My dad is a lot about it. He just does that stuff. He knows that. He loves it. That's why,
Somebody that hasn't spoken, I want to honor somebody that... All the way in the back, yes.
I love my daughter very much, but I need for my daughter to help me get through the hurt. I need for her to work with me to show me how to handle the hurt.
That was wonderful. Where's your daughter? Where's your daughter? Go back and give your mom a hug. That was incredible. Thank you, Mom, for the way that you expressed that. That was just very powerful. Give them both a big round of support. That keeps me going when I know that you're able to reach that level. Yes?
I would just like to say that even though I was a college child, that coming here tonight feel like what was done and
Yeah, isn't it wonderful that you're not the only ones? And that's what all of this is about, is that you have a tendency to have a sense of isolation. Yeah, because it didn't come with an owner's manual, did it? I mean, truthfully, yes.
I wanted to say how I felt. And right now, my son is home taking care of my baby. He's not feeling good. I have to sleep, but I can't leave with his passion. Because I feel a little scared about that one girl. I don't feel it. And when that's up because her parents are gone a lot, and sometimes she leaves everywhere. And she has bad thoughts. And I'm scared for her because it sounds to me like she was saying that sometimes she thinks
say to the kids that said that they could handle alcohol and that they weren't going to drink and that their parents taught them right. And I too thought my parents taught me right. And I ended up in an alcoholic relationship. And I almost lost my life to alcohol. And today I'm 35 years old. And it takes every day and every strength to stay away and keep my children going and keep myself going. And I thought that I was not vulnerable, but I am.
Again, so much of the extra words get lost. They get lost for us every day. But no one misinterpreted what Amy was feeling. Because you could see it right up front. And that's all that this is about. And again, we have no role models. And I'm asking all of you in the room, stop the chain now. Stop the chain now, tonight. Take the techniques that we talked about, do the 24-hour challenge, do what I call the 30-second